In the final days of 1979, dark rumors began circulating through New Mexico's State Penitentiary. Whispers of an impending, violent uprising spread among inmates like wildfire, but prison officials dismissed these warnings as mere prison gossip. They couldn't have been more wrong. In the early morning hours of February 2nd, 1980, a powder keg that had been building for years finally exploded in one of the bloodiest prison riots in American history. The New Mexico State Penitentiary, located about 15 miles south of Santa Fe, was once considered a state-of-the-art facility when it opened in 1956. Originally built to house the state's most dangerous criminals in modern conditions, by 1980, it had become a crumbling monument to decades of neglect and mismanagement. The prison's decline perfectly mirrored the decay of the state's correctional system itself. Today, the abandoned facility occasionally serves as a filming location for Hollywood productions. Movies like The Longest Yard, starring Adam Sandler, and various other films and TV shows have used the eerie space for their productions. But crew members often report strange occurrences during filming, doors closing by themselves, unexplained noises echoing through empty halls. Some claim the place is haunted, and given what happened there, it's not hard to understand why. What makes these reported supernatural phenomena particularly chilling are the physical reminders of violence that still scar the facility. Hatchet marks permanently etched into the floors mark where horrific acts of violence took place. One stain marks the spot where an inmate had his head severed from his body. Another, where a one-armed man nearly lost his remaining limb to a berserk biker. These aren't just ghost stories. They're echoes of real human suffering. To truly understand the horror of what happened, we need to go back to the beginning. The original penitentiary had been constructed in 1885, making it New Mexico's first public building even before statehood in 1912. From its earliest days, the institution struggled with overcrowding and violence. Major riots erupted throughout the mid-20th century in 1948, 1950, 1952, culminating in a massive uprising in 1953, where 31 guards were taken hostage. That incident led to the construction of the new facility in 1956, which Governor John Sims proudly declared among the most advanced correctional institutions in the world. The new prison featured a unique layout with a central square-shaped building containing administrative offices and a large courtyard. Surrounding this core were various cell blocks, dormitories, and facilities, including a gymnasium, kitchen, hospital, and psychology units. At its opening, it represented cutting-edge prison design. But as the years passed and inmate numbers swelled far beyond capacity, the facility quickly deteriorated. The first warden, J.E. Baker, had maintained order through a system of incentives and educational programs. However, his successor, Felix Rodriguez, implemented a controversial snitch network that would ultimately contribute to the facility's downfall. This system rewarded informants while punishing those who refused to cooperate by sending them to Cell Block 5, home to the prison's most violent offenders, where they faced brutal beatings and sexual assaults. By 1980, the prison was a tinderbox of tension. W.G. Stone, an inmate who served time from 1962 to 1979, described the horrifying conditions of the Hole, solitary confinement cells where prisoners were stripped naked, given minimal food, and lived in unsanitary conditions that would make most people shudder. Even moving to general population offered little relief, as racial tensions between fish, short-term inmates, and lifers created constant conflict. The situation grew increasingly volatile under wardens Ralph Aaron, Clyde Malley, and Jerry Griffin. Each administration failed to address fundamental issues of overcrowding, poor sanitation, and staff corruption. A 1979 report damningly described the facility as one of the most poorly administered prisons in America. Cells were unventilated, toilets didn't work, rats and cockroaches infested living areas, and food was often rotten. On Thanksgiving 1979, inmates were served turkey, so spoiled it caused widespread food poisoning. Security lapses were equally alarming. In December 1979, 11 inmates escaped using a hacksaw smuggled from construction areas. An incident that should have raised red flags but resulted in only 2 tower guards being fired. More concerning was the discovery that Riot control gates and grills had been left unlocked for months, while supposedly shatterproof glass in the control booth was found to be anything but. As January 1980 drew to a close, warning signs multiplied. Psychologist Dr. Mark Orner received credible information about an imminent uprising. Inmates began requesting transfers out of Dormitory E2, traditionally a precursor to mass violence. Staff members reported unusual behavior among inmates, yet nothing was done to prevent the disaster that was brewing. On Friday, February 1st, a full moon illuminated the prison grounds. The atmosphere inside was electric with tension. Large groups of inmates gathered in hushed conversation, while a female secretary called in sick, claiming she sensed something bad was coming. That evening, in Dormitory E2, a group of inmates from Cell Block 5, the prison's most dangerous unit, gathered around a table drinking homemade alcohol called home brew. This potent concoction, made from water, fruit, yeast, and sugar, fermented in plastic bags hidden in shower pipes, emboldened the men as they planned their attack. At approximately 1:30 a.m. on February 2nd, Shift Captain Gregoria Roybal and officers Michael Schmidt and Ronnie Martinez entered Dormitory E2 for a routine head count. What they encountered was a carefully orchestrated ambush. Due to Martinez's fatal mistake of leaving the door unlocked, additional attackers flooded in, overwhelming the guards within seconds. The powder keg had finally ignited. The captured officers were stripped naked, bound with torn bedsheets, and blindfolded. What followed was 16 hours of unimaginable horror as the riot spread throughout the facility. Armed with makeshift weapons and fueled by years of pent-up rage, over 500 inmates roamed freely through halls that should have been secure. 2 crucial areas remained untouched: Dormitory D, which the rioters couldn't access, and Dormitory E1, where terrified inmates barricaded themselves inside their cells. The violence escalated to sadistic levels as prisoners settled old scores and turned their wrath against symbols of authority. Guards known for cruelty faced particularly brutal treatment. Makeshift weapons appeared everywhere as inmates exploited every security weakness in the system. The administration's response was slow and disorganized, hampered by years of budget cuts and staffing shortages. Throughout the day, negotiations proved difficult as different factions among the inmates had conflicting demands. The lack of leadership structure made finding common ground nearly impossible. Meanwhile, inside the main control room, staff watched helplessly as cameras revealed scenes of complete anarchy. Prisoners moved freely between cell blocks, some wearing guard uniforms they'd stripped from their captives. Perhaps most disturbing were specific acts of violence that emerged later. Reports of inmates being dismembered, burned alive in their cells, and subjected to horrific sexual assaults painted a picture of pure chaos. The psychological trauma inflicted during those 16 hours would haunt survivors for the rest of their lives. When order was finally restored, the human cost was staggering. 33 inmates were confirmed dead, though some estimates suggest the true number might be higher. Over 200 people were injured, many severely. The physical damage to the facility ran into the millions of dollars, but the real cost was much higher. Trust in the prison system had been shattered. This wasn't just a spontaneous outbreak of violence. It was the inevitable result of years of institutional failure. Systemic issues of overcrowding, staff corruption, inadequate funding, and racial tensions had created an environment where such an explosion was almost guaranteed. The New Mexico State Penitentiary riot stands as one of the darkest chapters in American penal history, a stark reminder of what happens when we fail our most basic duty to treat all humans with dignity and respect. Even today, decades later, former inmates and staff members report strange occurrences at the old prison site. Doors opening and closing by themselves, unexplained noises echoing through empty corridors. Perhaps these are simply urban legends, or perhaps they're echoes of the terror that unfolded there. A haunting reminder of the day when years of institutional failure exploded into 16 hours of pure hell. The story of the New Mexico State Penitentiary riot serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the importance of humane treatment in our correctional facilities. It reminds us that when we push people to their breaking point, the consequences can be catastrophic, not just for those directly involved, but for society as a whole. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing and sharing this video. Understanding our past is crucial to building a better future, especially when it comes to how we treat those within our justice system.